Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. Technology is so cool and it brings amazing people into my life. I met today's guest on a virtual therapy platform and knew pretty quickly I could learn so much from her. She is warm, caring, inviting, genuine, authentic, all the things a seasoned talk therapist should be, in my opinion. When I met Linda Lauretta in a Zoom peer coaching group, I wanted to know more about her. And when I made the decision to start podcasting and interviewing talk therapists on their expertise, I knew I'd be reaching out to her. I can't wait to share her with you all. She has such an amazing and unique story about how she began meditating, how she found Ayurveda. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview. Welcome to the Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I am very excited to bring today's guest to you all. Her name is Linda Lauretta, and it's a funny story how she and I met, and I think it's one that we definitely need to share as we get going with our interview. Linda and I met on an online counseling platform where we are providers, and we were put into a group together, a coaching group, to learn how to use the program and learn how to use the platform. And I fell in love with this woman. She has such a spirit. I did, yeah. You have such a spirit about you. You're very giving, you're very patient, and you're very kind. And I imagine that your clients feel all of those things as a peer. And I'm very honored to be your peer. You have so much more experience in this profession than me. So I'm starstruck actually because of what you just shared with me. And I know you're going to get into who you are and how you help people. And so I want to welcome you. So welcome to the Therapy Show. I'm very excited. Let me read your bio for everybody so they can hear all about you. So Linda Lauretta is a licensed clinical social worker and has been in practice for over 22 years, specializing in the treatment of anxiety-related disorders and mindfulness. A strong proponent of traditional healing systems, she has studied abroad and received certifications in Ayurvedic, I think I got it, medicine, and incorporates this into her therapeutic approach toward lifestyle coaching. Alongside her counseling, she has been active in promoting human rights causes through her work with the United Nations and various peace organizations using dialogue and conflict resolution. Linda has been a practitioner of meditation since 1989 and provides instruction in meditative exercises as well as using mindfulness to help clients reach a deeper level of self-understanding. So welcome to the show, Linda Lauretta.
Glad to be here, Lisa.
I'm so happy you're here. You and I were talking before we started recording, and if you could just repeat everything you shared with me about how you got into this work, your path to where you are today, it's fascinating.
Okay, so I will add a little piece that I didn't share with you, which is about my basic master's education. I attended college actually as an adult. So I came from a very traditional, old-fashioned background where my father did not believe that women should go to college. So I put myself through college as an adult. At the time, I had young children, and I ended up getting my master's degree in social work at Fordham University in Tarrytown.
Okay.
So that's where my professional education started. And I had by then already studied hypnosis and was really getting a feeling for working at a level that was beyond traditional talk therapy. After that, I've always had a passion for the peace movement and sort of felt like, wow, I missed 1969. It was part of watching my brother and sister who were older go through that period of time. And so I always had this yearning to do peace work. And so I found my way and I muddled with some organizations and some little ways. And then I started to meditate. I took my meditation training with Transcendental Meditation back in 1989 and took to it like a fish out of water.
Yeah.
My children responded, who were very young at the time, and I could see that I was changing through meditation by my kids' response to me. And I caught my little son, who was about 3.5, telling somebody, we never bother mommy when she's meditating because now that she meditates, she doesn't scream so much anymore.
Right.
So
that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought, okay, it's working. I'm going to keep up with this. So that led to me starting to explore other parts of Eastern philosophy and, of course, yoga. And yoga is not just the postures and the exercise. There's also a lot of philosophy, and a lot of it is psychological.
Mm.
From there, I stumbled upon Ayurveda, and I went for Ayurvedic treatment with somebody here in the Northeast. And again, it was something that really resonated with me. My parents were Italian immigrants, but they came via Tunisia, and they had a lot of folk medicine practices. So I was very accustomed to using natural methods for healing. So Ayurveda really started to click with me. And I got so enamored with it that I decided I was going to study and try and incorporate it into my psychotherapy work. So I started to take a course in Manhattan through a wonderful woman who was definitely a mentor for me. And she still practices in Manhattan, Pratima Raikor. And her story was fascinating because she was one of the very first women that was taught Ayurveda, because it used to only be taught to men to practice. So she ran a course in Manhattan and brought in professors from India. But that really didn't seem to be enough for me, and that was falling apart. And I thought, let me just go to the source. So I took some time and I traveled to India, and I spent 5 months there. I took a couple of month-long courses in Ayurveda, and it was specifically designed for foreign students. In the traditional education for Ayurveda, to be a full-on Ayurvedic doctor, you have to learn the Sanskrit language first, speaking and written, and you have to be able to do your Ayurvedic thesis in Sanskrit.
Wow.
Out of the question for me, who was, not in that position to spend 5 more years studying Sanskrit. So I went to this Institute for Foreigners, and they brought in all the same professors from the Indian universities to teach to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I specialized in herbal medicine after my basic introductory course to Ayurveda.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back, and when I spoke to them, I'm leaving out one really kind of exotic part of this. So none of the doctors at my school would talk to me about the psychiatric part of Ayurveda, because it was connected with spiritual medicine, and they just didn't want to appear hokey or have any of that. And they said, we'll send you someplace else. So I went all the way down to South India in Kerala, where they had the only government-sponsored Ayurvedic psychiatric hospital.
Wow.
And it was wild. Wow. And I sort of got in under the radar and was able to do rounds there for a couple of weeks, and no medication at all used. People came in violent, schizophrenic, hallucinating, and were treated solely with herbs, smoking the herbs. I mean, creating a smoky environment with the herbs, and using ghee, which is a clarified butter infused with herbs, and meditation and yoga. And that was it. And within 30 days, people left completely calm and stable. So I had witnessed one person who came in violent and was restrained one day, and I came back 2 days later, and they were free and walking around and calm, no medication. So I thought, okay, there's something to this. How can I practice this when I go home? And every single professor said to me, all you can really do in the US is practice preventive medicine and lifestyle counseling. And I thought, I could do that. I can incorporate that as a therapist. I can certainly do lifestyle counseling. Mm-hmm. So that's how I came to really start to blend Ayurveda in with psychotherapy and some of the meditation work. And that has evolved over time by watching clients' responses to the various modalities, and really seeing people who were open to meditation and starting to practice it get through their episode of therapy in about 2/3 of the time that non-meditators would.
Wow.
So there was really something to this. I had watched this happen time and time over. And for the most part, by the time I had closed my physical practice, because now I solely work remotely and online, as you know,
right,
I would say a good 75% of my clients were meditators, practicing some form of meditation. And it showed in their results. So to me, it was a win-win all around. And my peace-seeking heart
Mm-hmm.
believes that the more people who meditate and develop peace within themselves contributes to greater peace in the world around us.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So that's sort of how the practice evolved, really from me seeking those practices for myself of
Right.
meditation and Ayurveda and fully incorporating them into my life to the point where I thought I can share this
Right.
with my clients. And, my personal philosophy is I wouldn't teach or preach anything that I haven't fully put to use in my life.
Right. Right. I'm blown away. I'm over here just seriously, I know the side of you that's the therapist on the online, the platform that we use. So I'm over here just going, well, when we're done, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to go follow Linda's, lead, and I'm going to learn more about that. I know they call it TM, right?
Yes.
That's what they call it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm really excited to dive into what you're going to share today. I think it's just such a wonderful information for therapists to have. First of all, would you suggest that if we plan to take what we're going to learn today and apply it with our clients, we should as well know how to do it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I do recall reading an article that was maybe about 7 years ago, and I apologize, I don't recall the source, but it was about when meditation became really hip.
Right.
That therapists were telling their clients to meditate without meditating themselves. And we are our tools, we are our instruments,
Right.
and we can only give what we have. So, absolutely, I think if you want to talk about and share meditation with your clients, you have to have that experience because otherwise you can't fully share and help that client as they start to meditate and they have experiences. Right? That wisdom of a self practice can then be shared.
Great. Okay. I think that's fabulous. I'm going to learn. I'm excited. So, we do have some, learning objectives that we want to cover, and we make sure that we get through. But as we are going over the learning objectives, please bring in whatever is, stories, anecdotes, examples, what it looks like in practice, all of that good stuff. I imagine our listeners are very similar to us. They possibly are sitting with a cup of coffee, or they are riding in their car and they're going to the office, they're commuting, or maybe they're even, it's a Saturday or Sunday morning and they're just trying to get in some extra learning. So we are all friends here, and I am grateful that we have this time together. So let's talk about the basic understanding of the principles and how do you use it in psychotherapy?
Okay, so let me start with meditation and then kind of evolve to Ayurveda, which incorporates meditation. Again, for me, my personal experience with meditation and having my psychotherapy knowledge and my education, it really helped me understand more of what was happening in my mind as I was starting to meditate. And I would take some spiritual retreats about meditation. And so that was also extra learning for me. And some of the things that you go through when you start to meditate is that your body starts to release stress. And sometimes you might have a shudder or a shiver when you start to meditate. And that is really a sign that your body is starting to let go. It's almost like that feeling, if you've ever had it, Lisa, where when you're starting to fall asleep, you catch yourself.
Oh, yeah.
It's a release of stress. It's a physical release of stress. And so that happens in meditation. And so things like that occur that clients would get a little bit nervous about or say, what was happening? My body kind of threw off a shudder or something or a shiver. I'd say, okay, that's just a release of stress. And then I started to use meditation in ways that could help me with real life problems. And so I started to realize, and of course, this was also with a lot of reading because there were countless meditation books coming onto the market, that if I sat and held the idea of a concern or a problem that I had right before I sat for meditation, there would be some insight that would come from that meditation.
Wow.
And so I started keeping a pad and pencil next to my meditation seat. And when I would come out of the meditation seat, I would recall that I had this feeling that flashed up. And so I would just jot down that feeling, similar to how you'd wake up from a dream and you have a feeling left over. And then I would be able to use that to explore, did that relate to the idea or the concern that I brought into meditation when I cleared my mind?
Okay.
So that started to develop into using meditation in really practical ways. Is it a blissful relaxation? Yes. Is it a great way to clear your mind and relax your body? Yes. And the more you meditate, the more those qualities of stillness, of neutrality, of balance start to leak into your daily life. It can't help but happen. And so after a couple of years of practicing meditation and kind of seeing the changes in a lot of areas of my life, and certainly in my emotional balance, I really started to bring it into the practice.
I love how you're sharing your experiences because you're covering what we want to learn is just a basic understanding of meditation and Ayurvedic principles. So this is making
Okay.
complete sense. Yes, keep going, keep going.
Perfect. Okay. So I started out meditating twice a day for 20 minutes, and that has varied throughout the years. There are times that I would end up meditating for 45 minutes just because it was such a rich sit, so to speak. And there were times that it was going to be a really busy day and I maybe had 10 minutes to sit. So I started out very regimented about it. Twice a day, same time every day, sit on the same seat, sit on the same pillow, make sure that your body is comfortable. And that became one of the most important things in helping clients learn to meditate is you must take care of the body.
Right.
So you want the body to be so comfortable that you will not have to switch positions. Of course, if you need to, you have to, but you want to have a drink of water before you sit. You want to prop yourself with pillows. You want to be warm. You want to know you're not going to be disturbed. So if you take care of all those conditions before you sit, it's going to enable a much more peaceful meditation session. So in the beginning, it's important to be a little bit regimented with it. And the recommendation is to try and sit for the same time each day. I did it twice a day because I had that flexibility in my schedule. But if you do it once a day, it's a fabulous start. If you do it once a day for 5 minutes in the beginning, it's a fabulous start.
Okay.
And you can build up because then your body gets to know this is the time for meditation. I'm sitting on this pillow. I'm sitting in this chair. The lights are dim. I'm warm. I know my body recognizes this is the time to be still. And all of those components lead to having a more, I don't want to say a successful sit, but a more rewarding and fulfilling session.
Sure. Okay.
There are many ways to meditate. I really like to focus for most people on using the breath.
Okay.
And following the breath. And then I take that into other realms where with any anxiety disorders, we go to the breath.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start meditating and focusing on the breath, and so a typical breathing exercise would be to imagine that your breath is about a couple of inches below your nostrils, and you feel the air, which is cool compared to your body temperature, moving through your nostrils, and you feel the air then moving down through your respiratory system, and it's expanding your chest, it's expanding your ribs, it's expanding your abdomen. And then you feel with the exhale, all of that is releasing and the air is moving back up. And then when the air comes back out your nostrils, it's warmer because it's mixed with your body temperature. If you follow your breath that intricately, you cannot pay attention to anything else because the mind, regardless of what most people think, can only focus on one thing at a time.
Right. Wow.
So if you are following and tracking the breath, there's no room for any anxious thought. There's no room for any thought of the future, any concern about the past. It's just the breath. Once you do that, you are, after a few breaths, you now are centered in the body. And so now you can sit for that meditation. You can let your body come to stillness, and you can have whatever length of sit you've decided for yourself. Or if you're kind of a free bird, you can let it go for as long as you want, as long as you can stay in that restive state.
Right.
So using the breath, I think, is the easiest for most people. And there's a lot of different breathing techniques. There's 3-part breath, which we get from yoga, which is a nice, deep, slow 3-part breath that we let the abdomen raise first and then the rib cage. It's kind of the reverse of what I just said.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then release it. There's square breathing that has been really helpful with people who are in addiction recovery, to get them body centered. So the breath work really leads into body centered work, which is crucial with anxiety issues,
right?
Just to get people out of their head.
Yeah.
Not that all of us couldn't use help getting out of our head,
right?
But definitely with anxiety, we want to bring that awareness, that focus out of the headspace and down into the body. So that's how I teach meditation. And I think that's the easiest way to start. You know, of course, there's mantra meditations, there's repetitions of other things, there's guided meditations.
Sure.
When I work with my clients, I absolutely start them with a guided meditation. Sometimes that includes, if anybody is familiar with meditation, the now very old Relaxation Response, which was Herbert Benson, who was one of the first books that came out on meditation. And that is about moving through the body and doing a body scan and helping people relax, you know, like muscle relaxation.
Sure.
That. So I do a guided meditation with clients to get them started. And that is a bit of a hook.
Oh, yeah.
Because once you reach that restive state that you've never really reached except in a deep sleep, you then get hooked.
Yeah.
And you want more.
Right.
So it really is about helping your client get to a relaxed state first, because they may have no clue how to do that.
Yeah.
And then once, and this is, you know, again, where body intelligence comes in, once the body has tasted that state of stillness and rest, it wants that back.
Right.
And it remembers how to get there. It's like any other habit that we develop.
Okay.
You know, we get up in the morning and maybe we reach to the nightstand for a glass of water that's there, and it's kind of automatic. It becomes the same thing with any of these thoughts getting into the body. So that's how I start clients off with meditation in the practice.
Okay.
That evolves over time with clients who do decide to pick up a meditation practice. And I just want to say I've never done like past life regression. I've not really into that level of taking people into a deeper state. This is about helping people get to a state, because for some of us, it's really difficult to get past the intellect.
Yes. Yes.
And the only way to do that is to help through meditation, kind of using a couple of old hypnosis tricks to get people to bypass their intellect and their mind. And when somebody has had a really hard time accessing past traumas or past hurts, or just, you know, a difficult stage in their life, and they just can't get out of their head, I will use what I've kind of coined as meditative inquiry, which is taking people to not a full meditation, because I want them to be able to respond as we continue therapy. So we go to sort of like a halfway point in a meditative state. And I ask the person to kind of just signal to me, are you still able to speak? Do you still want to speak? You know, are you not too full into meditation? Let's come back a little bit. And then I ask them some of the questions that they can't answer in a normal waking state of awareness.
Wow.
And they and I are always incredibly surprised by the information that comes out that never was touched upon before.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's really quite phenomenal. And so, and you know, some of these things were just really trial and error in the beginning, because some of it was let's just sit for meditation for a few minutes before we start to speak. And then I would notice that when the meditation was done, people were accessing levels of memories that they didn't have before the meditation. And I thought, okay, there is something going on here that I want to find out how to replicate and use.
Right. Oh, wow.
And so that's how this meditative inquiry sort of evolved, from just sitting for meditation in silence to let me use it. And again, a couple of hypnosis tips that I brought in to help keep people in that level where they could still speak
Right.
and still be in a quiet state with their eyes closed and their bodies calm. And that seems to open up the flow of memory. It seems to remove the fear that people choke on when they're remembering a trauma or a really emotional event.
Right.
And it just opens up that doorway for people to speak with ease and let it come up. So there's the resistance is kind of taken away because of the meditative state.
Right.
So that's how I use meditation.
Okay.
I want to shift a little bit unless you have any questions for me about that.
The one question that comes to mind, are there any issues that would not be appropriate, or any, I guess I think about, you're a very seasoned clinician. You've been doing this work for how many years? 30 years, right?
22.
22 years. Okay. 22 years. So a new therapist hearing all of this gets excited and says, "Oh, I want to do this." What's the level of experience? And then what type of clients would this not be a fit for, if any? I don't know, maybe not.
So I certainly wouldn't do this with anyone, and it depends on the population you're working with, right? I wouldn't do this with anyone who's schizophrenic.
Okay.
It's not appropriate with people who have developmental delays because they kind of can't access those upper levels of awareness.
Okay.
It isn't that it's inappropriate. You can help them relax, but
Sure.
you're not going to have the kind of results that you're looking for.
Right.
Outside of the schizophrenia, nobody who has any kind of history of hallucination.
Okay.
And that kind of is about it. I have, people come in and ask me, "Oh, I want to remember my past lives." And my standard response is, I have found that this lifetime is really enough to work with.
Right.
So maybe when we complete understanding this life, me first,
Right. Right. I like
maybe
that.
I'll think about another lifetime.
Right. That's
But
a great answer.
Yeah, I just like to focus on this one.
Right. Right.
Let's make this one work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, why do we don't need to go there yet? Let's get on this. Let's get this one dialed in right.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that's
Exactly.
really helpful. And then when you think about, I would assume that if you are a newer therapist and you want to start to implement some of this, you should have some pretty good supervision from someone like a mentor or somebody who can guide you in this and give you that feedback.
And you really, if you want to use the meditative techniques, you should have at least 6 months to a year of a meditation practice yourself.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
Because you can't help somebody else get somewhere that you haven't been.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. That's very helpful. So yeah, go ahead and shift over into the Ayurvedic principles.
Okay. So the Ayurvedic introduction is a little bit more dry than the meditation, so it's a little bit more clinical.
Okay.
So Ayurveda is really based on the principles of nature. So similar to Chinese medicine, it works off of the 5 elements. Chinese medicine works off of a different couple of elements than Ayurveda, but Ayurveda works off of ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And on those principles, everything on the earth is made up of those 5 elements, including us. So some people have probably heard about Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, which are the 3 constitutions, the 3 main constitutions of Ayurveda. Those are based on the 5 elements. So Pitta, for instance, is mostly fire with a little bit of water quality. And Kapha is earth and water, which you can imagine makes for a heavier constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And Vata is air and ether, which makes for a very etheric, airy constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people are only one. Most people are a combination of those two. So people listening are probably saying, okay, what do the elements have to do with, psychology or psychotherapy? So we learned primarily in Ayurvedic treatment how that affects the body and how that affects physical health. So I did have to seek out, as I said, Ayurvedic specializing in psychology, and I was able to find a couple of resources for that besides the one I mentioned. So if you imagine that Pitta is fiery, it's a fiery personality. It is your type A personality. It's the person who's driven. It's the person who's highly motivated. It's the very ambitious person. It's the person who is easy to anger. Physically, it's the person who tends to develop more inflammatory physical illnesses because the system is overheating all the time. So, Vata, 87% of all physical illnesses are begun in a Vata state. So, there is no grounding to pure Vata. So, Vata and anxiety can almost be synonymous, right?
Okay.
Think about free floating ideas in space. So somebody who can't get out of their head at all. So that's anxiety, and that's Vata, air and ether. In the body, it leads to a lot of problems with digestion because there isn't enough heat, there isn't enough warmth, there isn't enough moisture to really help the digestive process. With Kapha, water and earth, we're talking about people who are more of like a solid build.
Mm-hmm.
And it lends itself more to lethargy, to depression. So if you mix water and earth, what does it make?
Like
mud.
Mud. Yeah. Okay.
It makes mud.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So how fast does mud move?
Yeah.
How much movement? So it's very lethargic.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to be heavy and weighed down and lends itself to depression.
Okay.
So those are some basic ideas about how you apply Ayurvedic to psychology. So the beauty of Ayurveda, there's a couple of beautiful things, actually, many beautiful things, is that one of the main purposes of Ayurveda is to bring us all into harmony with our environment.
Okay.
So since we're all made up of these same 5 elements and these qualities permeate the entire universe, including our bodies and minds, we want to live in as much harmony with our environment as possible. So Vata Pitta Kapha applies to the seasons of the year. It applies to the time of day.
Mm-hmm.
So 10 to 2 is Pitta time, day and evening.
Okay.
So what happens in Pitta time, since it's fiery, the digestive fire is really rocking. It's the best time to eat.
Okay.
So when we think about how Europeans eat their main meal in the middle of the day, it's perfect with Ayurvedic principles because that's when your digestion is the strongest.
Okay.
So Pitta is 10 to 2.
Okay.
Vata is, I have to think about this for a minute.
Sure.
Kapha is 2 to 6.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Vata is 2 to 6, both periods of the day.
Okay.
So what does Vata, since it lends itself to that airy etheric nature, what is a great thing to do between the hours of 2 to 6? So if you're up at 5 or 5:30 in the morning, when the earth is pretty still, when there's not too much traffic outside, when there isn't a ton of activity, but the mind can really be churning up some beautiful etheric ideas, it's a perfect time for meditation.
Okay.
So that's how you use the Vata time of day. It's not a great time to eat because not one of the stronger digestive times.
Okay.
So Kapha is 6 to 10, both times. So when would be the best time to go to sleep? And utilize that heavy lethargic nature, right? It would be really no later than that. Before 10. Now, how many of us do that? I'm guilty of that. I certainly don't do that very often.
Right.
But I did have a period of like living by that. And I can tell you I slept better.
Huh. Okay. I'm just thinking about our sleep schedule. We go to bed between 9 and 10.
That's perfect.
Okay.
Because you're really capitalizing and using the lethargy
Mm-hmm.
of kapha to help you drift into sleep. So the principles, these 3 qualities, are utilized throughout the day. So think of the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Winter is what? Cold, dry, sometimes moist, but pretty drying. Worst time of the year for vata, because vata is dry, cold, right? So any vata symptom is exacerbated in the winter. Any pitta symptom is exacerbated in the high heats of summer. Any kapha symptom is exacerbated in like the late spring and early fall when there's a lot of moisture.
Okay.
Right? So anything that builds those qualities that are already abundant in your constitution will aggravate your condition. So it becomes a matter then of balancing. If you're a vata predominant person and it's the thick of winter, what do you want to do to counteract all of those drying and cold qualities?
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
warm
Mm-hmm.
and lubrication. So with a vata constitution, healthy fats.
Mm-hmm.
We hear so much about healthy fats in the last, 5-6 years.
Oh, yeah.
Of primary concern for any vata condition or anybody with a primary vata constitution. So lots of healthy oils,
Mm-hmm.
lots of warm cooked food.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what we tend to reach for in winter anyway, to balance that.
Right.
So we're using the opposite qualities to balance out any imbalances that we currently are experiencing. Now, that's not just for physical treatment, that's also for psychological treatment. So if your anxiety is raging in the winter, and I know people have a lot of seasonal depression
Mm-hmm.
in the winter as well, but if your anxiety is ramped up because you can't get warm and I've seen people drink like these massive glasses of ice water, and I cringe when I see it because I go, oh my God, they have a typical vata body. It's the middle of winter. They're chugging ice cubes.
Right. Oh,
And just
gosh.
imagine what's happening in that poor body that just needs warmth and moisture.
Right. Right. So hot liquids, tea,
Hot liquids,
soup.
soups.
Gotcha.
Again, adding that olive oil, adding the sesame oil, having those nice stir fries, or, I usually steam my vegetables and then add the oil later
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for a little bit of a healthier twist.
Mm-hmm.
So Ayurveda is really about balance, bringing the body and the mind into balance. So now if we talk about more lifestyle tips,
Mm-hmm.
so if you have a type A personality, somebody who simply can not stop being active, and the difference between pitta and vata is like vata can be very physically active, but the mind isn't churning and pumping out the way a pitta
Mm-hmm.
predominant person would be.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that pitta drive. Pitta needs to really meditate, to
Okay.
just chill, to just relax, to be able to step away, to get some balance in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So for them, a meditation practice, a yoga practice, because Pitta will want to be out running in the morning, in the gym at lunchtime, doing a home workout at night while figuring out their notes for tomorrow's conference meeting.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So how do we step away from the mind? How do we get Pitta to step away from the mind? Take some quieter physical activity,
Okay.
do some yoga practices, but with the intent to relax, not the intent to be the best at the yoga posture,
Right.
which is Pitta's desire, right?
Right.
So it's this sort of helping people remold their tendency to be that ambitious. driven person. So how do we help them step back? Let's look at ways to reorganize your day. Let's look at your daily routine.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at what you do before you go to work. Let's look at how much time you have to spend having fun,
Right.
right? Pitta wants to accomplish. We would like you to have some fun.
Right.
We would like you to have some warm fuzzies,
Right.
right?
Right.
Whereas Kapha loves to have fun. Kapha loves warm fuzzies. Kapha loves the big comfy chair in the living room, covered with the Afghan,
Yeah.
Big fuzzy slippers, everything cozy right there.
Right.
That's the person we have to motivate to be more physically active.
Okay.
And the more we get them physically active, the more they can enliven and awaken their mind and get them out of some of that slump and some of that lethargy. So that's a really basic introduction to Ayurveda. So Ayurveda has a few branches.
Okay.
It does have a surgical branch, of course, nothing that I've ever really explored much because I'm not going to go in that direction. It uses a lot of herbs. It uses food and spices.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that was interesting when I was in India is that I would see, families cooking and using all these Ayurvedic principles. And I would think, I'm a Westerner. What do I know?
Right.
I'm there in their kitchen. I'm going, oh, Ayurveda. And they're like, what?
Right.
No, I didn't study Ayurveda. Why?
Right.
So it was so ingrained in the beginnings of time for Indians that you put turmeric in because turmeric is an antibacterial and it's an antiparasitic, it's an antifungal,
Mm-hmm.
it is an anti-inflammatory.
Mm-hmm.
So you put turmeric in your food. When Ayurveda was being developed and explored, we learned, turmeric has these qualities. So it's going to be really important for us to get turmeric, especially in India, where, the hygiene back in the day was not so good,
Right. Mm-hmm.
to really incorporate it into the diet. Well, how many Indian dishes, have turmeric in them?
So many. Everything, probably.
Yeah, 90% of warm dishes, if not more.
Yeah.
And so it just is a natural evolution from, well, that's how the origins of it in that country started. And so people just keep doing these things, not even realizing that they're Ayurvedic principles. Wow. So we use the food, we use that clarified butter, the ghee.
Mm-hmm.
I went on a bit of a tangent one year, deciding I was going to have a ghee company. And I made ghee and I sold it to health food stores. And then I thought, what am I doing? I'm not a food producer. I could do Ayurveda without selling ghee and making ghee. And
Wow.
But
it's interesting, though.
Yeah.
So interesting.
So there was a bit of my pitta
Yeah.
quality coming out, right? I could do this and I could incorporate this part. And I thought, okay, step it back.
I've got some pitta in me, that's for sure.
For sure. You do. You
Yeah.
do. So a lot of herbs, a lot of working with food and spices, a lot of daily routine.
Mm.
So one of the first things when somebody comes, of course, for Ayurvedic treatment, I would do an evaluation of where they fall with these three constitutions.
Okay.
And then based off of whatever their combination or their predominance is, I start to talk about a lifestyle routine. So a daily routine with Ayurveda includes oil pulling.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, I know in the yoga community, people are pretty well aware of oil pulling. It's becoming more popular. It's called gandush in Sanskrit. And we did have to learn quite a bit of Sanskrit throughout the course, just certain treatment words and anatomy. So it's oil pulling, which has really gained popularity because it pulls a lot of toxins through the teeth and gums.
Right.
So we talk about that. We talk about scraping the tongue. We talk about clearing the sinus cavities, whether it's with oil or melted ghee or, the saline solutions and the neti pot.
Right.
And then we talk about daily massage, daily self-massage with sesame oil, doing a scalp massage for somebody who is really riddled with anxiety because coconut oil is cooling.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps. And I know that sounds counter vata, but when all your energy is focused here, your head tends to heat up. And so
Right.
to cool off the scalp,
Right.
we do a coconut oil massage. Sesame oil is better for the body because it warms.
Okay.
So everything is looked at. Is it drying? Is it moisturizing? Is it cooling? Is it heating? What is the weight? Is it heavy? Is it going to create more heaviness in the life? So the daily routine starts with all of those things, all of the oral practices and the nasal practices, because how clear is your mind when you have a sinus infection?
Right.
How clear is your mind when you have a head cold?
Right.
So if you do these daily practices, you're going to have a lot more clarity of mind. You're going to feel that you're not going to have that brain fog because you're removing any of the waste products that would normally stay in there if you didn't do these practices. So it doesn't just help the body, it helps the mind. I can't tell you the last time I had a sinus infection.
Wow.
I just don't remember. And if I did, it was so minor, it would be gone without antibiotics or anything.
Wow. So before we stop the Ayurvedic information, well, first of all, I need to know, I'm going to start doing I've always wanted to do the oil pulling for some, and I was just thinking about this last night. So it's been in the back of my mind. I need to start doing this, but this is just fascinating to me. If I wanted to learn more just for my own health, do you recommend a book, a website?
Absolutely. So I would recommend any book by Dr. Vasant Lad.
Okay.
Vasant.
Okay.
Last name is Lad.
Okay.
So he does travel to the US at least once a year in July, and he does a workshop, 5-day workshop in upstate New York. He has an institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And of course, he has an institute in Pune in India.
Okay.
He's an amazing human being, And he can teach anything in Ayurveda. It's just incredible.
Wow.
So if you get a chance to read just about anything, he has a book of home remedies.
Okay.
Ayurvedic home remedies that I would recommend. That's pretty basic. And sometimes he even will transfer out an Ayurvedic herb that maybe isn't so accessible in the US to something that's comparable that we could get in the US with these home remedies. He has that, and he's got quite a few basic books on Ayurveda. And there is a book by Dr. David Frawley that's called Ayurveda and the Mind, which anybody who wants to think about incorporating this into their psychotherapy practice, I would absolutely recommend that book.
Okay.
It's a fascinating read.
Awesome. This is so helpful. And what we'll do is we will put the links to these books in the show notes as well. We'll get the information out. So if you are listening right now and you're trying to write this down, it should be in the show notes. We'll have it posted for you. Not a problem. This is just fascinating to me. I mean,
it's a fascinating.
I'm so glad we're talking
tradition.
about this. It is just, okay. So if we are going to move on.
I just want to say two more things about Ayurveda. And with Ayurvedic practice, there's a couple of things that professors have said that have been so beautiful that they've just never left my awareness. And one is that Ayurveda seeks to enhance life. So the way it treats you is to restore your body to its original condition and your original constitution so you can thrive in this body-mind that we were born into. So it brings your body back to the state where it can heal and repair any illnesses that are existing.
Okay.
As opposed to like the antibiotic movement, which is to kill anything foreign or unknown. And so this works with everything Ayurveda works with whatever you've got.
Okay.
And the second thing that another professor had said that was just so sweet, he said, Ayurveda is sort of like a replacement mother because it is about nurturance and nourishment, plain and simple.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I could understand that for sure after learning about it, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful.
Okay.
So let's talk about body-centered.
So body-centered therapy. I'm not going to focus so much on the philosophy about it because there are countless books right now. There is The Body Doesn't Lie. Can't think of the one that's current right now, but there are many ways to look up the philosophy.
Okay.
But what I wanted to focus on is, how do I use this? How can this be used in therapy?
Okay.
So when you have anxiety, when you have somebody who has addictive issues, when you have somebody who really has a difficult time trusting their own judgment, listening to their own gut instincts and following those gut instincts, it's crucial, I find, to get them into their body so that they can register what is happening to me physically when I'm having an anxiety attack. What is happening in my body when somebody is confronting me and I have the right words, but I don't say them. I can't bring myself to say them. What is happening every time I try to stop drinking that I find myself in certain situations reaching for that drink? So it's about tracking back and back and back. What was the thought right before you lost your voice in that conversation? What was the feeling right before? Well, people are like, well, I don't know. How am I going to know that? Well, here's what we're going to do from now on. When you're in one of those situations and somebody confronts you, where in your body do you feel it? And let's talk about the last really rattling conversation you had. So start talking about that. And while they start talking, I'm sort of really working to relax myself, to get myself into a slight meditative state so that I'm really receptive to what the client is saying. Not that we're not normally receptive, but
Sure.
sometimes when you get deeper within yourself, you hear other things and you hear more subtleties. So as they're talking and they're getting ramped up, right? Because as people do when they're recounting a difficult situation, I stop them and I say, where in your body are you feeling this? And they will say, oh, right in the pit of my stomach sank. Or, oh, my chest is closing up. Or, oh, my whole shoulders and neck are cringing, or I'm getting nauseous. That's how to start helping people become aware of what happened right before you lost your voice. What happened right before you started going into a panic attack? What happened right before you had that anger explosion?
Right.
Because if I can get them to start becoming aware of their body, I can get them to start connecting this physical sensation with what is happening in their mind and what's happening feeling wise. And when we then can track back to the feeling and or the thought, then we can track back to the memory. Then we can track back to what was the root trigger of your reaction. So it's about going back, back, back.
Right.
And taking the awareness to really being in tune with your body. So the more in tune you can help a client get with their body, the more they're going to be in a better position to respond the way they want to, more appropriately in any given situation. So if you now know my stomach sinks right before I start to feel anxious, the moment your stomach sinks, you start doing your breathing exercises. And then you can start to prevent an anxiety attack instead of starting to come back from one, which is a heck of a lot harder.
Right. Oh, this is great.
So that's how I work with body-centered therapy. And what it really does is it takes clients back to being able to trust themselves, to being able to trust their own judgment, to being able to listen to themselves because they've got this kind of physical, really tangible thing to root to.
Okay.
And it's a huge self-esteem builder because I can listen to myself. I'm paying attention to what I'm feeling, to what I'm thinking, to what my body is doing. And I'm listening and then I'm acting on it.
Right.
So people who've lost their voice, people who stopped trusting their judgments because everybody told them that they weren't really perceiving what they were perceiving.
Right. Right.
Benefit from this.
Right. Yes, I can imagine that the clients, you're giving them a gift to trust themselves again, to honor their feelings. It's okay. And just to give them that gift and tell them this is what we're going to work towards. I mean, that's amazing.
And
For so many
actually,
people.
it's them giving themselves the gift.
Right. But they need you, in a sense, sometimes, the counselor, to validate and to say, no, it's okay.
Yep.
This
Keep
is
going.
Keep going. You're doing it right. And you might be the only person in their life telling them that. So, wow. All right. I'm fascinated by all of this. I keep using that word, but I really am. You've just, I know I said this on the episode 1 with Nicole. We get so caught in our niche and we're so tunnel vision in what we do and how we do it, that sometimes it's having an amazing conversation with a peer or a colleague that just can really re-energize your excitement for this work. So thank you so much for sharing all of this today. Personally, I'm loving it. I'm geeking out over here. I'm like, I'm just going to go learn so much. So thank you once again. So
oh my God, thank you, because
yeah.
it's great to talk about this, right? And this is why we talk to each other,
right?
Because we learn from each other, even when we don't even know we're learning,
right?
Or teaching,
right? Yeah, I'm so glad we connected. Oh, so
yeah,
glad.
me too.
So let's talk about one of the things that I'm really interested in learning more is mindfulness practices versus traditional talk therapies. How would you compare, contrast? How do you know when to do one over the other, or how does that work for you?
So I find that with mindfulness, like I guess any therapeutic tool, you use it at different levels. And so, in the case where somebody comes and they sought me out because I have meditation as part of my toolbox, we start out with some very introductory things and, some psychoeducation on mindfulness and meditation and just being more aware of yourself as you go through the day. And so that's not so different from the approach with talk therapy. To use some of the tools that I had talked about earlier, which is like the meditative inquiry, or to do, deeper guided meditations for, a little bit more heavy issues, you really have to have that rapport first. I mean, most people are not going to close their eyes and let you guide them in a meditation until they trust you.
Correct.
And they probably shouldn't.
Right. Exactly. Right. So it's okay if you go in and you're not ready. It's fine.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So you want to build that rapport. And once the client is comfortable, and if they didn't come in wanting mindfulness, depending on what their condition is or what their goals are, I would start to introduce it as one way that they could address their issues. And maybe make some recommendations, whether it's a relationship. I have a couple who does a body scan almost every night together. And it's the sweetest thing. And it really is building their relationship. So how does that compare with talk therapy? I think using the mindfulness helps people get past their intellect much faster if they want to. If they want to. So talk therapy, as I think I had mentioned earlier, traditionally an episode of talk therapy lasts longer than one that incorporates mindfulness. Mindfulness versus talk therapy, when there's a physical illness or a body image that's part of the client's problem scheme that they bring to you, I find mindfulness more effective because it does address some body issues, and certainly, whether we're talking about cancer treatment or whether we're talking about lupus or Lyme disease, which is big in this area, really using mindfulness and awareness skills helps that client feel like they're getting a more well-rounded approach.
Okay.
So Partly it depends on the client. Does the client lend themselves to mindfulness? Do they want straight talk therapy? Are they somebody that sees, mindfulness as a hippy dippy, airy fairy
Right.
practice? And okay, we're not going to go there.
Right.
Although few people maintain that stance
Yes.
after a while.
Right.
Most people do open up afterwards. So I find that mindfulness is a softer journey.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put it that way.
Sure.
I think it's really a softer journey because it opens up your heart.
Mm-hmm.
It takes the stress off of speaking emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
If we work with mindfulness, the person now is learning how to step away from their emotions and become a witness
Mm-hmm.
to their emotions, where they have more a sense of control and balance. They don't feel so pulled, to opposite poles by their emotions. And so I think that I'm really coming out with a bias towards mindfulness, aren't I? Really?
That's okay. We like what we like. And when you see it working and you have
Right.
the anecdotes to share, why not?
Yeah. So, but there are people who come in,
Mm-hmm.
some elderly clients who really they just need to talk.
Sure.
They just need to talk. They just need to vent. And in their peer group, the open dialogue that, your generation and my generation has
Mm-hmm.
really didn't exist for people who are in their 70s,
Right.
you know?
Right. That's a good
So
point.
for them, they just want to talk.
Right.
Is it okay to talk about all this stuff?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you've had the experience of clients who come in and they whisper.
Yes. Yes, I have. Or they ask for permission, like you just said,
Yeah,
Is it okay to
yeah,
talk about this? I'm like, you can talk about
right.
anything you want in here.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Mhm.
And so maybe the first couple of sessions they whisper. And
Mhm.
I say, really these walls are really thick, or this
Yeah.
platform is really confidential.
Right.
And,
Right.
it's okay to raise your voice a little bit if you need to
Mhm.
when you talk about some of these hot issues.
Right.
And so for that generation, I do find that talking is
Mhm.
really what they need, because they
Mhm.
didn't always have a venue or a platform or the peers to just be able to say the things they wanted to say. Or maybe they're embarrassed of their children's lives and they wouldn't fathom talking to their peers
Right.
or
Sure.
colleagues about that. And I just need to talk about this. Don't tell me about anything else. I just want to talk and I want you to listen. And
Right.
maybe at the end, I'll give you a couple of minutes to comment. And
Right.
that's what I want. And that's what works for them. And
Right.
so there is certainly population
Right.
that just benefits from talk therapy.
Sure.
Teenagers,
Right.
we do whatever we can to get them talking. I don't work so much with teens anymore,
Mhm.
but heck, all we want them to do is talk because it's so hard for them to talk.
Right.
So for them, once we get them to open up, we don't want to
Mhm.
stop them talking.
Right.
They're not at the point where they need to chill their life yet. They're in the throes of
Mhm.
developing emotionally.
Oh, yes.
And so you just keep talking.
Right.
So I think you have to look at different populations
Yeah.
and see what is the need of this life stage.
Mhm.
And so mindfulness works, I would say, from certainly 20s, 30s, midlife ages, 60s. I think that's I would say that's the focus
Mhm.
group that really is more open and needs mindfulness.
Okay. Okay. That's really good to know. Thank you. Thank you for that. Let's shift just a little bit. And when you think about a book that you would recommend to your clients, any book, it doesn't have to be, what's one of the books that come to mind that you like to recommend, and why?
So I have, for probably almost all of my 22 years in practice, recommended Irvin Yalom's Love's Executioner.
Mhm. Oh, that's good.
Amazing. You've read it, so you know.
And you're reading it.
He is, to me, the pinnacle clinician. And, he's still with us. I think he's like 92 or 93 and still doing conferences on video.
Mhm.
And he actually originally poo-pooed online counseling and has totally come around and
Yes.
said it absolutely has its benefits. And I see its usefulness and effectiveness.
Yes.
So Love's Executioner reads like a novel, although I think it's about 6 case studies.
Mhm.
And I usually explain the title to people when I recommend it. It's a great book for both sides of the couch, therapists and clients and lay people alike. And I think about that often, that part of our work is being the erroneous definition of Love's executioner.
Mhm.
And I usually tell a client that when I'm recommending the book.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's often at a point that they're getting upset with me because I'm not enabling their ideas of staying in a difficult relationship that's destructive.
Yeah.
So when I'm challenging that, it's a perfect time to recommend that book. And I tell them exactly why and what the title means.
Mhm. Okay.
Our job is to bust those myths
Mhm.
about love that keep you hurting yourself.
I agree.
So I've constantly and consistently, I think I've bought about 23 copies of that book, no exaggeration, and lent it out, never get it back. And I just buy another copy until the next opportunity to lend it out.
Right, right. I think that makes sense. I'm going to reread that book. I'm so glad that you brought that. I think I saw you put that on your Facebook page because I went and checked out your Facebook page. Everybody needs to be following you if they're not already. But after listening to you a little bit, I'm sure they all went to Facebook and looked you up. But I saw you posted a link to one of the chapters, and didn't you just hear him speak? Is that right, or did I imagine that? No.
He spoke at a conference in Florence, Italy.
Okay.
And a friend of mine who's a psychologist who arranged that interview
Mm-hmm.
sent me the audio
Okay.
to that interview.
Okay.
So I had the privilege of hearing him speak.
Yeah. I want to say, I think I have this right. When the last time I went to the Low Country Mental Health Conference, which is held in Charleston, South Carolina every summer, I went 2 years ago. I believe they conferenced him in.
Okay.
I have to go back and look at my notes, but at one of their conferences, they brought him in, and yes, I was just, taking lots of notes, and he's just such a human, and he just believes in us being human. And I think it was him that he says after all of these years, people just want to connect with other humans, and
That's
talking
right.
about that, and just brings this what we do back to sometimes we can get kind of heady, and we get very much into best practices, and we get so much into research, and we get so much into techniques, and it's like at the end of the day, really, it's about being a human,
Right.
validating, listening, just be holding that space for people, and I always remember that of him. So I'm grateful that he is still doing his thing because he's
Yeah.
a great man.
Yeah. Remarkable man.
Mhm.
And, we will never get away in this profession from remembering that it's the relationship that heals.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Oh gosh, we could do a whole nother episode on that. So
Oh, yeah.
and I'm gonna message you. We're gonna talk some more. We'll do another one. What does your self-care look like?
So my self-care is, especially in the winter, the whole nasal
Mhm.
thing that I talked about.
Mhm.
So I do that daily routine. I have a meditation practice, and it does vary. I no longer sit twice a day. I sit just once a day,
Mhm.
unless there's something going on. I never make a major decision without coming home and meditating on it,
Smart. Mhm.
because I want every level of approval within myself
Sure.
and the go ahead before I make a major decision. So I'm always open to trying new forms of exercise, but basically I do yoga
Mhm.
and I walk. Really important for me to be out in nature. So in the winter, we have to supplement in the Northeast,
Mhm.
right? You're down in the South, so you're having some warmer weather.
Just a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah. It's been pretty frigid up here with some crazy variables. So it's been difficult to get out in nature. So I've been doing more yoga.
Mhm.
What I found at the end of the week is to take a restorative yoga class where you can kind of just melt into the postures and let the whole week go.
Sounds
That's really important. I find that I compartmentalize in healthy ways.
Mhm.
So When I am working, I have a working space and everything else is closed off.
Mm-hmm.
And when I stop working, I bought a wall desk that folds back into the wall like a Murphy bed.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm not working, I don't have to see a desk.
I
So
like that.
so I really work with my space
Mm-hmm.
that it lends itself to whatever the mode is. So if I'm in work mode, it looks like a workspace.
Mm-hmm.
When I am done and it's like personal family time, everything closes up and I just have personal time.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I'm rigid with anything, it would be with my boundaries.
Yes.
And I think in our line of work, that is so, so important.
Yes.
So I'm very mindful when friends have struggles that I address them as a friend. And when I feel it becomes more, I refer them to a therapist.
Yeah. There you go.
And yeah, one time when my older son was having me meet his future wife's mom, I had to promise not to analyze her. And I said, why would you think I would analyze her? I mean, you do financial insurance work. Do you want to do that on your time off?
Right.
And he said, no. I said, so why would I want to analyze people on my time off? I have no
Right.
intention. He said, it just happens unconsciously for you. And I do it not so much as a practice anymore, just because who wants to do that? Who wants to work on their time off? I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
No,
I'm
don't.
a person, you're a person, and that's it.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm very protective of my private time. I'm very protective of my family time. I'm very protective of my self-care time. And I eat really clean. Yeah.
After knowing what you know about all of yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah. I eat clean. I'm a clean food advocate. I try and hunt down the cleanest sources of food possible for our world right now.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. I do a lot of cooking. I like knowing what's going into my food.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, fussy about the places I eat for the most part. I have some flexibility with that. So I think that pretty much covers my self-care.
Yeah, it's like you've got it down to a science. It's just it's out of habit. Everything that you do, you practice what you preach. You started as learning and then you put it into practice and now it's a habit and it's your ritual. And it's very cool. Very, very cool. So as we wrap things up, if people wanted to find you, is that okay? Or your boundaries?
Absolutely.
Tell
Absolutely.
us about your boundaries with people reaching out to you if they want to learn more.
No, I'm always open to helping more
Okay.
people.
Okay. And I just want to reiterate that your practice is all online, correct? All virtual.
Yeah.
Everything you do is virtual now.
Yeah. I'm strictly online,
Okay.
save for the occasional Ayurvedic talk I might give in a yoga studio. Everything is remote.
Okay.
Everything is online. So, and, I too have found it to be really convenient for clients
Mm-hmm.
and accessible and easy for both sides.
Sure.
And it works.
It does.
It
Yes.
works.
I am an advocate for virtual online counseling. I never thought I would say it, but when I put aside my skepticism and said, all right, this is the future, we're moving in this direction
right.
and I really want to continue to do this work. It makes sense. So I can definitely see, and maybe we'll come back and do something on that. That would be really interesting. I would enjoy doing that with you. Well, I appreciate your time so much. Thank you for being here. Is there anything else that you want to share before we end?
I just really want to thank you. It's been great to talk like this. It's been great to have this conversation and share this. And, when you work remotely,
Mm-hmm.
I think having this opportunity to sort of share freely and talk about the principles and what's behind everything becomes even more important. And talking with colleagues and sharing becomes more important.
Oh, for sure. I'm so grateful for our group that we've had and how we've connected. And I mean, I have these great peers across the country that I wouldn't have if it weren't for stepping outside of my comfort zone and learning a new skill with online therapy. So, well, thank you so much. I look forward to doing this again. I would love to bring you back and we'll do some more. And Everybody, thank you so much for listening today. We hope that you have found this to be helpful. If you'd like to learn more about Linda, follow her on Facebook. You can check the show notes for where to connect with her and get all of the details of her and her fascinating career that she's had so far. So I look forward to seeing Linda just do even more amazing things in the future. So thank you so much. And you guys have a great day. And thank you for tuning in to The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard.
Thank you, Lisa. It was a pleasure.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for listening to The Therapy Show. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine. Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content. And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the podcast. Thank you.